Right, in this video here, we're going to start talking about the unit circle. Now, the unit circle is a very important aspect of trigonometry, and it's used for a lot of different things in trigonometry. So it's really important to understand what the unit circle is and the different ways that we use it to do different types of trigonometric problems. All right, so this is the first video I'm doing on the unit circle. So this one is just the definition of what the unit circle is and what we mean by a terminal point on the unit circle. We'll talk about that as well. So that you start to get an understanding of what the unit circle is, and then in other videos that I do, we'll get more and more in depth into what we use the unit circle for. All right, so the definition of the unit circle: it is the circle of radius 1 with the center at the origin. Right, so unit means 1. Right, so the unit circle is the circle that has a radius 1, and we put that circle of radius 1 with the center of it at the origin. We call that the unit circle. All right, so the equation for the unit circle is x squared plus y squared equals 1, right, which is a very important equation to be familiar with. Right, anytime we're talking about the unit circle, and anytime we pick any point on the circle, if I take the x and y coordinates of that point, x squared plus y squared is always going to equal 1. All right, so it's something that we'll use here and there dealing with trigonometry and dealing with the unit circle. If you have to figure out whether or not a point is on the unit circle, you can just plug the x and y coordinates into this equation and see if it adds up to 1. Or if I know the x coordinate of a point on the unit circle and I want to find the y coordinate, I plug the x coordinate into this equation and then I have to solve for y. Right, so again, this equation here, x squared plus y squared equals 1, comes up in a number of different types of problems that we'll see as we go through trigonometry and work with the unit circle. Right, so picture of the unit circle here. Circle-ish. I'm not great at drawing circles, as you can obviously tell. But the circle with a radius of 1, so it touches the the x-axis at positive 1, the y-axis at positive 1, the x-axis at negative 1, and then the y-axis at negative 1, right, with the center at the origin. All right, so there's a picture of our unit circle. Now, on the unit circle, we define something called a terminal point, right? So we start with what we call a t value, right? And t represents any real number. All right, so this is true for any real number t. Whatever that number t is, basically what we do with that number t is we travel a distance around the unit circle, a distance of t. Now, depending on whether t is positive or negative, it determines which direction we go. So if t is a positive value, well, whether t is positive or negative, we always start on that positive x-axis at the point 1, 0. All right, so this is the point 1, 0, right there. So when we're finding terminal points on the unit circle, we're always starting on that right side at the point 1, 0 on that positive x-axis. All right, so that's always like our starting point, our frame of reference. Now, if t is a positive number, I travel around the unit circle counterclockwise, right, going up here through the first quadrant and around, a distance of t. Right, so for t equals 2, let's say I travel around the unit circle along the circumference of the circle until I go a distance of 2, which is going to be somewhere up in here. And then wherever that point is, that's the terminal point for t equals 2. Right? If t is a negative value, all right, so let's say t equals negative 2. Well, once again, I start on the positive x-axis here, but for a negative t value, I travel clockwise. I start going downwards into the fourth quadrant, and for t equals negative 2, I can't travel a distance of negative 2 because distance is always positive, so I just do the absolute value of negative 2. So I travel 2 units in the counterclockwise direction, which would take me somewhere over here. That would be the terminal point for t equals negative 2. Right, so that's what we mean by a terminal point on the unit circle, and the t value is the distance that we travel along that circumference of the circle. All right, so just to draw you a couple pictures of what that looks like. If I have a positive t value, I start here, I go this way, I travel a total distance of t. This is when t is greater than 0, right? So for a positive number, whatever t is, like I said, if t equals 2, then the distance I travel along the circumference is 2. All right, if t equals 3, well, I go a little bit further and I travel a distance of 3 units. All right, and the point I end up with here, p, x, y, that means a point with x and y coordinates. We call that the terminal point of whatever that t value is. Right, so again, if t equals 2, I travel a distance of 2 units along the circumference of the circle. Whatever point I end up at, those x and y coordinates, we call that the terminal point for that number t. All right, and if t is less than 0, I do a similar thing. I just go in the other direction. Right, so here's where t is less than 0. If t is a negative value, I travel clockwise. I start at that positive x-axis. If t is positive, I start going upwards. If t is negative, I start going downwards. Right, that's the way I remember it. Positive, I start by going up into the positive y values. For a negative t, I start by going down into the negative y values. All right, and then however far I go, again, that number t determines how far I move along the circle, and it is possible to move, more than once around the circle. Like if t equals 100, well, I go around the circumference a lot of times before I travel a distance of 100 units, right? So you can go multiple times around the circle. This one can go all the way around and past this other point. Right, so you get a lot of overlapping values. Like different t values will give you the same terminal points on the unit circle, right? Like for this one up here, right? If I travel this distance here, for whatever that t value is, it gives me that terminal point. But if I travel all the way around the circle and then still end up at that point, well, it gives me that same terminal value, right? So different real numbers can have the same terminal points on the unit circle, right? Which is one of the important things to know about trigonometry is that for different values, for different t values, you can end up at the same point on the unit circle. You can get the same terminal point, right? So the p and the xy, just to kind of write this up here, we call that the terminal point for whatever the t value is that traveled that distance around the circle. All right, so summing up what we have here, the unit circle, it's a circle of radius 1. The center is at the origin, so it hits the positive and negative 1 on the x-axis and the positive and negative 1 on the y-axis. The equation of the unit circle is x squared plus y squared equals 1, which remember, that means if you take any point on the unit circle, right, any of these terminal points we were talking about, if you plug the x and y coordinates into this equation, and you do x squared plus y squared, it's going to add up to 1 every time when your point is on this unit circle, right? And then for t values, the t value is giving us the distance that we travel, right? It's literally how many units am I moving along the unit circle, and then when I go that distance, wherever I end up, that's the terminal point for t, right? Terminal means the end, the ending, right? So I travel the distance of t, wherever I end up, we call that the terminal point for t. Those x and y coordinates are the terminal point. And if t is positive, we travel in the counterclockwise direction, starting on the positive x-axis, moving upward. If t is negative, we travel clockwise on the positive x-axis, the starting point, we start going downward. All right, so that's some of the basic stuff about the unit circle and about terminal points. Now in the next video that I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about some of the special terminal points on the unit circle, right? There are some points on here that we know the t value, we know the distance that we're traveling, and we also should know the x and y coordinates for those terminal points, right? So there are a number of special terminal points that we use a lot when we're doing trigonometry and doing problems that involve trigonometry. So my next video will talk about some of those special terminal points. So make sure you check that one out.